Oi, olá todo mundo. Meu nome é Monique, eu sou intérprete, meu language pair é entre português e inglês. Eu trabalho como intérprete OPI e VRI. Para quem não sabe, OPI é over the phone e VRI é Video Remote Interpreting. E eu sei que eu estou falando um pouco rápido, então eu vou tentar diminuir a velocidade que vocês vão interpretar. Eu trabalho com legal interpreting e também medical interpreting, então pode ser sessões de corte ou também de casos de medicina. E é um grande interesse meu porque eu tenho uma condição médica que é muito rara, chamada distonia, ou o termo técnico do tipo de distonia que eu tenho é paroxysmal kinsinogenic dyskinesia. E por isso eu me interesso muito em doenças raras ou invisíveis, ou condições raras e invisíveis. Então sei que eu estou falando em português agora, mas eu vou fazer a minha apresentação em inglês, porque eu sei que não todo mundo fala português. Mas eu queria dar uma introdução em português, justamente para vocês saberem que eu falo português. Mas então vamos lá. Rare or invisible conditions. Big interest of mine. I happen to have, like I said, a rare condition. And in terms of the legislative definition, a rare condition is classified by a condition that 200,000 people or less in the US have. Of course, there are various definitions of what, is a rare condition or disorder. So if you go to this website here, it is rarediseases.org, and you can see alphabetized the many rare conditions and disorders there are in the world. So you can see these trisomy X, XXXY syndrome, etc. And when you're interpreting for medical conditions, you may come across some rare or invisible conditions. So examples of rare conditions are dystonia, which is what I have, and I have a subtype of it, which is even more rare, called PKD, or paroxysmal kinesiogenic dyskinesia, which causes me to have severe muscle spasms and mild forms of seizures. So if I wasn't taking medication, I would be having these muscle spasms and collapsing to the ground every 2 minutes. This started at approximately when I was 8 years old, and doctors figured out that I have a rare gene that passed down from my aunt who has epilepsy. And that is the type of dystonia that I have. And so I take seizure medication so that I do not have these seizures or severe muscle spasms that cause me to collapse every 2 minutes. Another type of rare condition is progeria, which is an aging disorder where kids age really early. And if you look at children with progeria, they look like this. There's actually a girl on TikTok, she has progeria. And I've interpreted for a case with progeria, which is the first time I ever heard of it. The Progeria Foundation was reaching out to a family to schedule a flight for the family so that the child could go see a specialist cardiologist in Italy, because it's the only cardiologist in the world that could operate on such a small heart, because these children with progeria have very small hearts. And here's a picture of pretty much what I looked like when I had severe spasms or mild forms of seizures. If I don't take my medication, this is kind of what I look like every 2 minutes when I collapse. My body contorts and I collapse. There are many other rare or invisible conditions in the world. They may not necessarily be rare, but maybe you can't see it with the naked eye. Two other ones I also have, which came about this year. Not so fun. Endometriosis, which is 1 in 7 women have this condition, and it causes a lot of pain, a lot of heavy bleeding. Anemia, which is usually because of lack of iron or iron absorption of the body, and it can happen due to endometriosis as well. So when people have these conditions, you looking at a person walking around, you wouldn't know that they have a condition like this. So therefore, they're considered an invisible condition. And that is something that they have other organizations for as well, like the Rare Disorder Organization. They have invisible organizations as well. And people are trying to promote more awareness to these conditions, just so people are more sensitive to people who may have either an invisible or a rare condition. Like I said, it may not be visible to the eye, therefore it's considered invisible. Sometimes they may or may not be controlled with medication. And here's a video that I wanted to show you guys. Of course, this link was sometimes opening today and sometimes not. I think it's going. So here's a little girl. She has a
Drinking warm water before
rare
bed
condition.
balances blood sugar levels and reverses type 2. Thousands of people are apparently regaining control of their blood sugar every night as
And you guys can try to interpret.
Her laughter and spirit hasn't faded. It's still very present, but behind her smile is the tough truth.
It's just hard to know that your child is going to die and there's nothing you can do about it.
4-year-old Tessa Bruner is the only child in Florida suffering from CLN2 Batten disease, an extremely rare nervous system disorder.
We noticed the speech delay at 18 months.
The first sign something wasn't right.
She progressively started having more symptoms.
Muscle weakness, bumping into things, later vision problems, then seizures. She was misdiagnosed with epilepsy. It wasn't until she took a genetic test, about 18 months after the first symptoms appeared, her parents learned it was Batten disease.
First thing I said was, I'm gonna lose my baby girl.
An illness with a life expectancy of just 8 to 10 years.
We obviously had dreams for her, and it won't be a reality.
Her reality now is intense infusion treatments every other week in Orlando. The only treatment available for Batten disease. It essentially helps slow down the progression of the symptoms.
We're hopeful that it'll stabilize her and she won't get worse for a couple years at least. And we're praying for a cure to come about.
So far, there is no known cure for Batten disease, but the Bruners are hopeful one day there will be. In the meantime, they want other parents to know about the importance of getting genetic testing early, the very moment something seems off.
Insist for genetic testing, because if I would have caught this sooner, Tessa's outcome would probably be more positive. The damage already done to her brain, even if a cure comes about, will never be repaired.
Reporting in Valrico, Jordan Bowen, Fox 13 News.
So there's an example of someone that has Batten disease. And sometimes with genetic testing, you can find out maybe a gene for a specific rare disease. I had genetic testing for the type that I have, and unfortunately with the specialists, they were able to tell me that these genetic tests don't always pick up. So the PRRT2 gene, which is the gene for my type of dystonia, PKD, didn't show in genetic testing, but I was told by specialists that they were confident that I do have it. Unfortunately, it just did not pick up in genetic testing. And as you saw in the video, there's a lot of misdiagnosis as well. She was misdiagnosed with epilepsy, and I had to go through many years of incorrect diagnosis with my condition. The average is 7 years. I had to go through even more than that. So unfortunately, it takes a long time. I'm not sure why this video is not opening, but it's another little boy. He has Pompe disease, which is another rare disease that causes enlarging of the heart. If you guys want to try to open it during your own time, you're more than welcome. I interpreted for a very rare case that lasted 3 months for 6 teams of specialized AIDS and cancer doctors and nurses. And that was my most significant and most lengthy case that I've ever interpreted for. It was for a 22-year-old patient that had HIV that developed into AIDS. And unfortunately, he was to a degree of AIDS that was not curable or controlled with medication, where HIV nowadays, you can control the virus from taking over your body. And unfortunately, in his case, it was not possible. He was at a late stage of AIDS. And after 3 months, sadly, he passed away. But before he passed away, he started developing a lot of symptoms that the doctors and nurses that were specialized in HIV and AIDS said they hadn't seen since the 80s. One of the symptoms is Kaposi sarcoma, which is a type of cancer that is associated with the HIV virus that turns into AIDS. Originally, this patient was brought into the hospital because his friends said he wasn't making any sense, and they found that he had Kaposi sarcoma in his brain that eventually spread to his abdomen, and then it started showing on his chest and other parts of his body, like you see in this picture here. And so that was something I learned from this experience because I didn't know of this type of cancer, Kaposi sarcoma, that is caused by HIV, which turns to AIDS. There are many challenges for having rare or invisible conditions. The cost, the time of years for diagnosis, the research or lack of research, finding specialists, medicine, therapies. And here's a little chart that the National Organization of Rare Disorders they made to show the journey of the typical patient and the process in finding out, what is it that I have and how can I go about finding out more information or getting the right treatment or medication, correct diagnosis. It's quite a long journey, as you can see. Discrimination and questioning is something that people with rare conditions or invisible conditions often face. I myself once had a landlord at an apartment complex who asked me if my handicap sign was real because I could walk. I'm so sorry, because I can walk. And I told her, yes, it's real. I can walk, but I do have a condition, seizures. I didn't have to explain anything legally to her, but it's something a lot of people face if they can walk, if they have a condition. If you're in a wheelchair, it's more likely that people will understand and it will register that they have a condition. So here's a quote from Twitter that I thought was a good quote. Make sure to look just disabled enough so people believe you, but not so disabled that they think you're a burden. So it's like kind of finding that middle ground. I always feel like I have to walk around with a limp or something for people to understand that, my condition is serious, and that's not a good feeling to have. Finding a job is really difficult. Maintaining a job because of different conditions. There's a famous TikToker named Timmy, and he's a big inspiration because he has no legs, as you can see, and only one arm. And he still manages to run on a treadmill. So check out Timmy if you're ever feeling like you can't work out. Having energy and activities. for a social life, you know, with my condition, especially now with dystonia, endometriosis, and anemia. Some days I could barely even like walk down the street with my dog. It's become that hard. The awareness is important, the research, community support. Facebook group has been a big help for me with a lot of conditions, and finding out the research and the medicines and things like that. Hospital support, faith or church support groups, hospital community services. There's a TV show I really like. It's my favorite one, called The Good Doctor. If you have not seen it yet, I suggest you check it out. It is on Hulu. And they just finished the last episode of the show. And it's about an autistic doctor who is very smart, but he's very blunt and honest. So it comes out really funny. And he figures out a bunch of stuff that's going on in the hospital and how to treat or how to cure certain patients. Call the Midwife is another really good show that I love. It's on Netflix, and it's about midwives in a less fortunate area of London. And also the nuns, they help the less fortunate families. And it really is interesting, not only for the connection between the characters, but also to show where medicine started in the 60s. They they were able to figure out like how cigarettes are not really good for you like they used to think, and what is polio and those sorts of things. So the beginning of medicine. And if you'd like more information, here are some other websites. I can share my PowerPoint with Raquel if you guys would like to take a look. And that is all, guys.